Hi, my name is Jane Olman. I am an attorney in Israel specializing in real estate law. I'm originally from California, but I've lived in Israel for over 30 years and I studied law in Israel. The presentation today is to help you understand the basics of how to purchase a property in Israel and have a smooth and painless transaction. We specialize in helping people who are either new to the country or are purchasing property while they are still living abroad. This is possible due to the use of powers of attorney, but in any case, the most important thing is that you have an informed and easy transaction. So I'd like to help you understand the basics of how that would work. First of all, where would you begin? Most people feel that their head would explode if they begin to contemplate buying property in Israel, but it really doesn't have to be that way. Let me give you some simple rules for success. First of all, I tell all my clients that you need to lose your expectations. The system in Israel is different. You might feel like you're on Earth, but you're really on Mars. And it's important to realize that the things that you're used to is not really how it works here. And you need to understand that the system is different and have a bit of patience for those differences. More importantly, it's to avail yourself of the resources that are available to you. Mostly that entails building yourself a competent team who will be communicative with you and give you the information that you need. No question is stupid, and you should be able to get the information that you need to know that you are involved and a part of the process. So to that end, as I said, you really need to build yourself a team. Your attorney in Israel really captains that team. It's my job to not only do the legal work, but also to help you compile the team, and bring people into the team that will help you, ask the questions that you don't know how to ask, and make sure that at the end of the day, all of the information is being laid out on a table in front of you so that you can make an informed decision whether or not this transaction works for you. The first step in any property transaction is to check registration, meaning to check title. In Israel, as opposed to most foreign countries, there is no title insurance. There are no escrow companies. So your attorney performs all of those functions for you. As your attorney, I would first check title as the first step in checking any property to make sure who the owners are, the meterage that the property is registered as, if there are any encumbrances. We're looking at that title. That title in general is registered in the lands registry, which in Israel is known as the tabu, which is the Ottoman word for the lands registry. But that's not a hard and fast rule. Sometimes properties are registered in the land administration, known as Rami or the Minhal. Sometimes new construction is still registered in a registration company or a combination thereof. If you're buying properties in the Yeshuvim, in the settlements over the Green Line, they may have yet a different registration. So as you can see, it can be a bit complex, and it is your attorney's job to make sure that you can get clean title and to check that title before entering into any transaction. Additionally, when we are checking rights, we are also looking for registration of liens, encumbrances, mortgages, things that would limit our ability to get you clean title at the end of the day. So that is one of the things that we are looking for. Sometimes people ask me if there are unused building rights on a property that they are considering. For that purpose, we would bring in an appraiser. He's someone that we would bring onto our team. He or she would then do a full planning report where they go into the municipality, check the urban planning, the zoning, and see if there are any rights that are available compared to what is already built in the property. This can be an important piece of the process if, for instance, you are considering a property that you would only like to purchase if it is assured that you can build a pool or enclose a mirpeset or build an extra room, etc. So we never bank on any insurance that we have been given during the negotiation process, and we would want a signed report to make sure that you can indeed build the extra spaces that you have in mind if that's a stopper for you in the process. Another issue that we're looking for while we're looking at the registration is whether or not the property is built according to the permit. The permit is the legal building permit, which declares which spaces in the house or the property are legal. This is important, especially if you plan on taking a mortgage. A mortgage necessitates an appraisal, which, as I said, in Israel, an appraiser is also the person that does the planning report. In Israel, he wears two hats: appraisal, which is the valuation for the purposes of the bank, and the planning report, which tells us whether or not there are unused building rights. And he will also visit the property and tell us if the property matches the legal building permits. Why is this important? It's important because these areas which may not have a legal permit pose risk in the long run. You can be asked to take them down by the municipality at some point in the future. And sometimes it can also lower the appraised value because spaces that do not have a legal permit do not come into the appraiser's formula for the purposes of valuation. So what does that mean? It means that the bank, which is basing the amount of the loan that they're giving you on either the contract price or the appraisal, the lower of the two, may not loan you the full amount of financing that you're looking for if there are a lot of unpermitted or illegal building areas in the property. So again, this is yet an important thing to do before you sign the contract. In Israel, all of these pieces of the puzzle must be done before you sign the contract. There are no contingencies in Israel for financing. There are no contingencies in Israel for inspection. There are no contingencies in Israel for making sure that you like the title. Everything has to be done before you sign the contract. Once you sign, you're in. So all due diligence in Israel is done between the period of when you've made an offer and when you sign the contract. So again, as I said in the beginning, it's my job as the attorney to captain that team that's going to help you have that due diligence to get us to the point where you're making an informed decision and there won't be any surprises along the way. Additionally, in the contract, we would discuss the business terms. That means the price, the payment schedule, the date of possession, any extras, and if there are any repairs. This is really relevant to buying a second-hand property. You may know in Israel that most transactions are either new construction, which is buying off paper, buying off plans, buying from a contractor, or buying second-hand. Second-hand is when you buy from a private owner and the property is already lived in. These are slightly different structures. They do all carry the same need for due diligence before we sign. In a second-hand deal, all of these business terms would be laid out in the contract: price, payment schedule, date of possession, any extras that are included, and any repairs that need to be done. In a new construction contract, those contracts are made up of three parts. They are made up of the main contract, the plans, and the technical specifications. Technical specifications and the plans go together and must be reviewed so that you understand what you are getting in that property. So let's recap. In Israel, there are two main types of transactions: buying first-hand from a contractor and buying a second-hand, which means an already existing property. First-hand property contracts are made up of three parts: the main legal contract, which includes payment schedule, all the declarations by each side, how your payments are insured, things like that, the plans and the specs. Plans and the specs need to be reviewed before you sign, and we recommend that you use a designer or an architect to help you understand the size of what you're getting, the level of finishings, which things are included, etc. Remember, in Israel, no matter what kind of property you buy, properties are generally sold stripped from your point of view. That means that there are no appliances. Sometimes the heating and cooling system in new construction is not included, but only the infrastructure. Sometimes things like shower enclosures aren't included. It's very important that you understand what it is that is included and what it is that you're getting for your money. So when you're buying new construction, make sure you have those plans and the specs reviewed by an architect or a designer. When you're buying secondhand properties that are already existing, it's important again to make sure what's included. If you saw a fabulous chandelier hanging over the table and you want to make sure that you get it, it needs to be listed in the contract. Anything that is not permanently affixed and is not listed in the contract specifically is not necessarily going to be included with the house. Additionally, you need to make sure that the contract includes the date of possession. Secondhand, that's very obvious to know when the date of possession. First-hand contracts in new construction, that is more fluid. Obviously, we're in a state of flux right now in Israel, and we don't have a lot of workers for new construction, so you should be expecting delays on when the property would be ready. In Israel also, when you're buying new construction, there is a warranty period for new construction apartments. The full apartment is under warranty for a year. And after that, there are other warranties which go on for a period of 2 to 7 years for certain elements of the apartment. Therefore, it's important to buy from a reputable company that will be able to enforce that warranty and give you service to make those repairs. One other important element when you're buying new construction is regarding the payments and the price. There is an idiosyncrasy, something unusual about buying new construction in Israel, which is that the payments are linked to an inflationary index known as the Madad. That means that your payments that have not yet been paid and are to be paid over the future, can be a year, 2, 3, 4, while you are waiting for the property to be completed, will be linked to this index, meaning that slowly your price will rise, as this index is meant to reflect the cost of building materials in Israel. Currently, the law indexes means that it links only about 40% of your price to that index, but that means that slowly over the next 2 and 3 and 4 years, your price will go up slightly, so it's important to not budget to the end of your shekels. So make sure to ask your attorney what the significance of the index or the madad is if you're buying new construction. Payments when you're buying new construction are also unusual, and it's also different than second-hand construction. For new apartments, when you're buying from a contractor, your payments are made into a protected account against which you get a bank guarantee or an insurance policy. The bank then acts as a mini escrow company and doles the monies out to the contractor against building progress. You pay according to dates in general, but the money is held in this protected account, and you have an insurance policy or a bank guarantee, and the contractor gets his money as he progresses. So you don't need to worry that your money will be lost if the contractor runs into trouble, although it is very unusual that it happens with this process, as the contractors are well vetted by the lending banks before they're granted this arrangement. In second-hand deals, your payments are protected by a lien on the house known as a herat hazara, or a note of caution. That means against the first payment, you get a lien on the entire house, and then the seller can use your money, but you have a lien on the entire house. And then you pay in payments as you go along until the final payment is made against possession. In each case, the final payment is made against possession with keys. Going back to our contract negotiation, part of the legal work is to review the declarations by each side, either by the company in new construction or by the seller, the private seller in second-hand deals, and who would be responsible for repairs. And also what happens if either side is late or is in breach of contract. As I said, there are no contingencies in Israel. All of these checks and negotiations are done before you sign the contract. So please make sure not to sign a contract until you're satisfied with the due diligence and you have all the answers to your questions. Going back to building ourselves a team. Who would be on our team? So far, we've discussed your attorney and an appraiser, who would either be doing the valuation for the purposes of a mortgage or checking out the planning if we want to know if there are illegal spaces or if you have future building rights. But an inspector or engineer can also help us to make sure that you understand the physical state of the apartment or the house. In Israel, as I said, there are no contingencies. You buy the house as is. And that means it's a little bit more like buying a used car, meaning that if there are certain issues in the house, you have to be willing to accept the house in that state, or we have to negotiate that certain repairs will be made. It's much more unusual in Israel for sellers to make repairs, and the report is generally for our own edification and education to understand whether or not we are still interested in this property despite those issues. That's not a hard and fast rule. Sometimes we do have success in negotiating certain repairs, but the base assumption would be that the report is for your edification and to understand what you're getting into and to decide if you still like this transaction. Sometimes we bring in a designer also when we are doing secondhand, and not only when we're looking at firsthand, to make sure that if you want to make changes in the house, that it's possible to do so, and to make sure that this house will really fit your needs. In general, we suggest to budget for an additional 12 to 15% over the contract price, especially if you are a foreign resident when you are buying the property. I'll explain why. Taxes in Israel, the purchase tax, is a heavy budget line item. For purchasers who are still foreign residents when they purchase their house, the tax will begin at 8%. Just over 6 million shekels according to the current law, that tax jumps up to 10%, meaning the first 6 million shekel will be taxed at 8%, and the amount above that will be taxed at 10%. Since we're making this video for Nefesh B'Nefesh, and the hope is that all of you are making Aliyah, I will let you know that that tax can be partially refunded if you establish residency in Israel within 2 years of when you purchase your property, or if you make Aliyah within 1 year of when you have signed for the property. And again, the relevant date in Israel is when you sign for the property, not when you're taking possession. So you have two options again. One is to establish residency. That's not necessarily Aliyah, but establishing residency, meaning that you're living full-time in Israel, your center of life is in Israel, you're here at least 183 days of the year. At that point, if you establish that residency within 2 years of when you have signed the contract, you can get a significant rebate. Not a complete rebate. All Israelis pay acquisition tax. Everyone pays purchase tax, but a significant rebate. Or if you make Aliyah within 1 year, you also have that option, and you don't have to have the full residency requirement of 183 days. Again, the tax issues are a little bit too complex for this short presentation, but just know that if you make Aliyah or establish residency within a fairly short amount of time after you buy your property, you can be eligible for a rebate. So the main item on your Excel spreadsheet for budget would be the purchase tax. In a second, I'm going to get to the list of other costs, but first let's discuss how the money works. If you intend to take a mortgage, it's very important to have a pre-approval for mortgage before you sign the contract. As I said, there are no contingencies for financing. We have many mortgage brokers who are well-versed in dealing with foreign buyers or people who make money outside of the country, so it's important to use an experienced mortgage broker. As I said, you will need an appraisal for any mortgage, and that will need to be done also before you purchase the property to ensure that there are no surprises. We need to make sure that your funds are available. When you go to a second-hand purchase, you have to show up with a bank check, which means that the money has already come into Israel and we were able to generate that bank check, which we give to the other side, and then they can register the note of caution or the lien that I mentioned earlier. One important piece of the puzzle is how to move your money. It's not so simple as it used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, where you would just send money into Israel. Israel has a lot of very strict anti-money laundering laws, so you need to line your ducks up well in advance. That means that you have to send the money to Israel from an account in your name. If you're buying in your name, please do not send the money from an account in your company's name or a family trust or your uncle's name. It needs to be in your name. You will also need a letter from your CPA or someone who has prepared your tax returns and can attest to the source of funds, and also that all the taxes are paid in your home country. How to structure payments is also an important piece of the puzzle, as we need to make sure that it lines up with the availability of funds. So that will be part of the negotiation in either a first-hand or a second-hand contract to make sure that the payment schedule matches your ability to pay. Regarding additional payments, as I said, you have the purchase tax. That's a heavy line item. Linkage, which was the indexing or the madad on the first-hand purchases for new construction, needs to go into onto your radar for budget. Legal fees are generally 1% of the contract price plus VAT, which is currently 17%, meaning that let's say you pay 1%, it would now be 1.17% of the contract price for legal fees. Agents' fees, brokerage fees are generally 2% plus VAT. So therefore, as I said previously, when we're arguing or when we're suggesting 12 to 15% between the purchase tax, the legal fees, and the agent's fees, we're already at 11 or 12% depending on your purchase tax. So that's where that figure comes in. Additional fees, as I've listed here: mortgage broker, engineer, appraiser, improvements or changes that you want to make to the property. These are all soft costs which need to be taken into account. And incidentally, you cannot use mortgage money to pay these additional costs. So you need to keep back enough of your personal capital in order to make sure that you have enough funds to complete. Lastly, let's discuss avoiding mistakes. Again, build yourself a team. You can't do this in a vacuum. You cannot do it on your own. There are people who have built a large expertise in helping you navigate this system, helping you ask the questions that you wouldn't know that need to be asked. Write down any agreements that you have between your broker, between a designer, even with your lawyer, to make sure that there are no misunderstandings regarding fees and the timing of those payments. All changes need to be made in writing, especially when you're buying secondhand and you make a change regarding the date of possession or how the payments would be made. We live in a world that's very dynamic: cell phones, texts, WhatsApps, emails. Everything needs to be done in writing so that everyone stays on the same page and there are no misunderstandings. Pay attention to your dates. Once you have the contract, and please ask for a summary of all dates from your attorney. In our office, we send out an English language synopsis so that everything is clear to you. Put the dates into your calendar and advise your lawyer and your mortgage broker well in advance of any date for any payment so that they can help you and we won't be last minute. Again, don't be shy. You deserve this information. It's your right to understand what's going on, and you never want to hear, "Trust me, it'll be fine." You want the answers and you want the information. Ask your questions. And lastly, there are no real bargains. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And ask the questions and make sure that you're having an informed decision. And I wish you much luck. We look forward to seeing you in Israel.